All right, guys. So let's take a second and start with our do now and go over some of our expectations. So what are some of the things that you guys listed out for this? Yeah, Sky.
I said that we should take turns and make sure not to speak over nobody.
Yeah, so huge piece, taking turns, not speaking over anybody. Yes, sir.
We broke the one rule. You can't raise hands.
Yes, we don't raise hands in a Socratic seminar. Very true.
Everybody put your hands down.
Yes.
Basically, just be patient and, wait your turn and don't try to talk over.
Yeah, being patient is really important. Yep.
We should refer back to the poems.
Yeah, refer back to the text. Huge. Yes, sir.
Pay attention to what people say.
Yeah, why is that important, paying attention to what people say?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah, maybe you should pay attention to what I say.
Because you can know what people are talking about, and you will know what to say after them.
Yeah, you'll know how to respond, right? Like someone's talking about like one poem and you randomly bring up something else, not going to be appropriate. Yeah, Miracle.
Challenge each other.
Challenge each other. Very good. That's a good one. Agreed. Yes.
Stay on topic.
Stay on topic. Good. Yes, sir.
Don't be rude when you disagree with somebody.
Yeah. Right? Like, if you disagree with someone, that's totally fine, and that's part of the process, but, like, be polite about it. Absolutely. Yes?
Stay professional.
Yeah, stay professional with our language and, like, the way that we're talking. Know you feel me's, right? Really good. Yes, sir?
Correct use of vocabulary.
Yes. Good use of vocabulary. Yes. Terrence has a good vocabulary. He does. We got to use them right. Okay. So, anything else we want to add to this? All right. What did we say our goal was for today?
Everybody's points.
30 minutes, right? Like a solid 30 minutes of good discussion. Not like to the point where you're just trying to stretch out random things, right? And what else?
Everyone.
Yeah. Everybody gets a chance to participate and get in on this discussion. Like, yes, we have a pretty big AP class.
No.
However, we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's start off with our leaders. So we said Manye was a leader, India's a leader, and then we also said that Winoska, Carl, and Alexis are going to be helping out in terms of leading as well. So part of that responsibility is going to be like fostering those people and helping those people get in on the discussion that maybe aren't as like ready to go, or maybe not ready to go, but maybe not as like outgoing to jump into a conversation, not as aggressive. And then also, if we see a topic starting to die, transition into a new one, okay? I put some points up on the board for you, just the name of the poems as well as like some ideas if we get stuck. But beyond that, it's on you guys. So let's start off.
Alright, so what was the answer like in the beginning? So like, what makes poetry valuable? Who can determine like the value of poetry?
I think the readers determine the value of the poetry because it's all about like how they can analyze it, like interpret what they actually
I see poetry as a way to describe the author. Like, I feel as though like the author, I feel as though like the author has a lot to do with it, and that he should feel it, or she should feel appreciated. Like reading Emily Dickinson's poems, I really like her poems, and like I feel like I know her like as a person. Like if I were ever to meet her, I would love to meet her if she was still alive. But but like I could just see what type of person she is through her poetry. So I think it's valuable for the author.
Well, like besides it like being valuable for the author, it also can be valuable for the reader, because if you think about it, as the author writes the poems, some of us can relate to what the author is talking about in the poem. So that way, it can value us too as a person and what the author is trying to say.
I think that when you talk about like the value of poetry, it got to do with the author and the reader, because the author determines the value because like how much work he puts into the poem, and like he got to like, or he or she, like Emily Dickinson. When you read Emily Dickinson's poetry, you know that she put a piece of herself into that poetry, and you know that it got that it has a piece of her in it. And so, I mean, yeah, I can skip it. Go ahead. I'm done. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I feel like Emily Dickinson, like, you know, I know, like, she was crazy. Like, you could tell, like, something was wrong with her mentally because, like, every poem that we done read from her, like, she talks about death being common, but also, like, sharing it with loved ones. Like, it's like she always talk about loved ones in it. So I feel like most important to her was, like, loved ones and then her death, I guess. Because, like, she just really, like, supported death. And, like, her style of, like, doing poems, she always have, like, in each stanza is always 4 lines. It's, like, never more than 4 lines in each stanza.
Okay, now let's get to this question. I got a question.
Why do you think Emily did it?
For some reason. I don't know, like, it's just something she does, something for death. That's why, like, at least all her poems always talk about death. Like, in The Last Night That She Lives, like, she talks about how, like, it traumatized her and, like, shocked her how the way that she died. So I think she take death as a serious matter and that, like, it's something to, like, I think praise about or something.
I agree with what else.
That's like the message you can
I agree with what else.
I feel like she just feel like death, like nothing has to do with that. She's not afraid of it. It's, like you said, it's nature, so why be afraid of it? She's not worried about what's gonna happen anyway. Right.
She thinks that like life and death are like the same thing, you know. It's like they're both equal, and that you should cherish both of them.
Yeah, I agree with
you never know when you're
Winoka, Johnny, Miracle and Chance. Like, she thought death was like, it was something tragic about it and something traumatizing about it, but like how natural it was, she found that fascinating because in all of her poems, in all 3 of these poems, she talks about the nature of death and how there's something graceful about it, or how there's something like that's more than just what we see. Like, we see somebody dying and we see that it's sad, but then she goes deeper into that, like how sad it is, but then how she talked about in The Last Nights That She Lived, when she said a jealousy for her arose so nearly infinite. I took that as like when somebody dies, her belief that they're going somewhere different, that they're going into eternal ride, like, because I could not stop for death. How she talked about the train and how her and death was just riding.
I feel as if though she didn't really worry much about death, and she didn't find it like that scary because we don't know a lot about death. We just know what people tell us, but none of us have died. So I think that's probably why she didn't take death so seriously. Like, she lacked emotion towards it.
I want to bring up another point about like the connection between the 3 poems. I was starting to think about like what does all these poems have in common, and that allowed me to think a lot deeper than death. I started to think about life, like when Johnny said like death and life, they're similar. Like, I feel as though she's making a connection towards life, like even though there's an absence of a person from, from existence, yeah. And still, like, she's still including, like, livelihood characteristics through all the poems. Like, oh yeah, I heard of, and this is in the poem, I heard of life when I died. The fearlessness in the air was like the fearlessness in the air. Does it say that? I'm sorry. The fearlessness in the room was like the fearlessness in the air between the heavens of storms, heave of storms. And I made a connection, like, even though, like, you know, the character isn't fully there, she feels like she should make some connection through life and death, even though, like, people that's dead can't go back and tell people that's alive what's happening. So I think that she's not only talking about death going to happen, but she trying to figure out what does it have to do with the people that's still here.
Another point, and I heard a fly buzz when I died. And the third stanza, when she was saying, I will, my keepsake, find a way, what portion of me be assignable? It's like she was basically describing what happens before death. She's not only talking about death itself, but like all the elements that leads up to it, like what happens to your loved ones and what happens to you afterwards and all that stuff. And I think in that stanza, she was talking about writing a will before her death and giving away what was left of her.
And I heard speaking of what you just said, Alexis, like when you said, I will my keepsake signed away, what portion of me be, I was thinking about like how when India said like when you dead, you like that you're not in existence anymore, but it's still gonna be some part of you left on this earth when you die. Mm-hmm. Whether it's like your belongings, like that's what like the point of people writing a will, like to give back to like what they got left that's last and give it to their family. So.
And I heard a fly buzz when I died. What do y'all think the fly represents? Like
I was thinking about
The
that.
beauty of nature.
I think that the fly represents how, when you die, people are so quiet and they're mourning your death. And like you can't really, it's like still.
I think the fly represents like her life, how like she was trapped in like it was like solitary confinement for her because she was trapped in like her home and she wouldn't move nowhere and just write poems. And then it said when the windows failed and then I could not see to see. So I think it says when she shut her window she could not see the outside world no more. So she was just trapped in her house.
And I said like when like life, so like the fly represent like life, like Terrence said, like it's like the last piece, like the people, like the last thing like you hear like, or feel like when you on this world, like it's like yo, like you leaving. Like, it's a hype purpose. Oh, and then the last night she lived, you can't like them poems connect. So like the awful leisure time was at the end of the poem, our fate to regulate. So like when you die, like it's your fate, like I don't know, like when you on the earth, you're supposed to do something with your life, and then like so you can be remembered. Like I don't know.
To leave a legacy. So you're saying that the purpose on this earth is to leave a legacy and not, like.
In a poem, I could not, because I could not stop for death. So, in the poem, like I feel like she was saying like death couldn't stop her. She could not stop for death, but death would stop for her. And like she was saying, life was still going on. Like as she was saying, as they were going to wherever they were going, she was seeing like life was still going on. Like they were saying like kids were still in school and stuff like that. Nothing's gonna stop for death, but death will stop you.
I think I want to speak to Miracle's point because in the last night she lived, it said that we know the smallest things overlooked before by this great light upon our mind, italicized as it were. And like at her point was, it's like no one really, okay, after you die, but then like people who don't really like stay, mourning your death, like after a week, after your funeral, people move on.
And because I could not stop for death, and I heard a fly buzz when I died. When you compare them two poems, like how was the tone different? Like how did she talk about death differently in the two poems, and like how did that help like convey the message of the poem? Like,
Well, the poem because I could not stop for death, and the last night that she lived. I want to talk about a difference between those two. The last night that she lived, it talks about, the individuals that's still, you know, sustaining life on Earth. That's like the Earth as a whole. It's not really talking about her as one person. But because I could not stop for death and I heard a fly buzz when I died, it's more individualized, and it's more about her life rather than, you know, has people life goes on. Like, that's the main idea, that people still goes on after death. But like these two poems, because I could not stop for death, and when I heard a fly buzz when I died, it talks about more so of what she's experiencing when she dies and when she goes, rather than how people move on. So I see a difference between those two.
And I heard a fly buzz when I died. It was like, when I read that poem, at first I was looking at it like this kind of like a dark poem or something like that. Like it was like real, like it's sad, like it kind of, the tone is like sorrowful, like. But like when you think about it, it's more peaceful and it's more like she's going away, like lonely, than because I could not stop for death. Because I could not stop for death, what I got out that poem was that the speaker was like going gracefully, like because she could not stop for death. She was living her life. She was doing what she wanted to do. But when it was time for her to go, and when death came and stopped for her, she was ready to get on the ride and take it.
I noticed some contradiction in the poem "The Last Night That She Lived," and I want to go down to the last stanza. And we placed the hair and drew the hair erect, and then an awful leisure was our fate to regulate. Now, like the last two parts, and then an awful leisure was our fate to regulate. I had difficulty trying to understand what does she mean by awful leisure. You know, and this is like a conversation we had, you know, when we got the poem. But I'm just like, I'm really trying to understand, like, how, you know, leisure can be awful. Like, what is she referring to as far as, like, awful leisure?
When you're laying down or you're relaxing. But in the poem, the lady's dead, so it's not, she's relaxed, but she's dead, so it's not something to be happy about.
That's why she feel awful about it, because like, I mean, nobody wants to die, but we all have a time where things gonna come. Like, I mean, like in this poem, I feel that like you could expect certain things as you read it, like, but you gotta really like get deep into it, like how you said. Then an awful leisure was like, it being awful is that she died. But she felt relaxed still, because like she already knew her time was gonna come. So.
When I had like leisure, when I had the word leisure, I think of like activity, and it's like this poem. I look at this poem as like the last night she lived. The speaker died, or not the speaker, but the woman died. The woman died, and now it's like expectation and preparation. Now they preparing for stuff, and they was expecting her to die. Now they preparing for it. And as they go along, it gets sadder and sadder. And when I look at this last stanza, I think like they preparing her for a funeral, and it's like and then an awful leisure was you really don't want to, because in the beginning of the poem we was talking about how they didn't take death seriously, and how they were talking about her death as like something that just happened. But then toward the end, I thought that they really started feeling it, because the last three stanzas, they were talking about how sad it was and how hard it was to accept it. And so, an awful leisure was, I'm thinking like, okay, maybe they're preparing for the funeral, and it's hard to put away that person it's hard to put away anybody. And our faith to regulate, like Miss Nicholson said, like, I agree with her when she said that our faith to regulate, once something tragic happens to you, and you really gotta check your beliefs. Like, you really want to know, like, am I really what I believe? Is it really true? Is it really there? Like, if you believe in God and something happens to your mother or something like that, you might check God. Like, God, are you really there? Are you really helping me out? Andrea, you got something to add?
Yeah, I think that the awful leisure can go back to maybe how the woman died, which then makes you, like, maybe if it was a horrible death, it makes you think, like, whatever you believe in, like, oh, like, why does she die like such a horrible death? And if there's a true God out there, then he wouldn't have let that happen to her. And then that makes you think back on like, do you really believe that, or like double check what you actually believe?
So, Terania, how strong do you think Emily Dickinson feels about faith in her poems? Because like this is the only poem I felt she ever talked about it. So, how do you think that she would feel about faith?
In which poem?
In all three of them, like how hard is faith for her?
That she thinks that, like, I agree with Carl. He said that, well, in the Johnny, and I think it was Winovsky, that he said that life goes on when you die, and like you can't like you keep doing like, 'cause you know you're gonna die eventually, like, but like you have to do, like you have to carry on in life, and then 'cause death is gonna come anyways, like
You can't escape it.
yeah, and
I'm getting emotional.
So what you say, India?
What did you believe in Emily Dickinson faith?
Yeah, like how strong do she feel? Like, what's her opinion basically on faith?
Oh, well, I think that she thinks that, like, faith is, like, faith in, like, death and, like, faith in, like, living, like, it's, like, hard to, like, live and hard to, like, die for, like, both sides. So, like, if you dying, it's hard for people to understand or, like,
Accept it.
yeah, accept your death. But, like, when you live in it, it's, like, people, I mean, like, they don't really care. Like, I mean, but,
They might want to understand what it
yeah.
was. You was born.
Yeah.
Why do we get emotional? Like we know death is coming, but like we expect it. So why do you think like we get feelings or whatever? Because when you expect something, don't you feel like like why do we like feel the way we do when we like expect it?
Okay, when you expect death, like you expect everybody to die, but when somebody close to you died, it's like you don't want it to be true or want it to happen because you love that person, like you have a real connection with them. So why would you just sit there and want them to die? Like they won't want themselves to die because they still probably want to see you graduate and stuff. So it's like you still like, you know it's going to happen, but you don't want it to happen.
But look, let me break it down. Sometimes when you close to somebody, it ain't always about crying though, because you know what? That person could have had a good life, and you know they had a good life. So all you can do is just say, he had a good life, so I'm going to still be with him either way it go. Like, they probably still show emotion deep down the side, but crying, that's not, it's showing emotion, but, like, they just keeping it inside to show people how strong they is for the other person that died. But look, let me get back to the faith part. Okay, faith is a good thing when you living. Like, when you living, I'm talking about you want to do something real good for yourself, and sometimes you want to do good for other people. But if you know that you did those things while you were still alive, when you die, you shouldn't have a problem because you sitting there relaxed and you know that you did some good for other people and yourself.
That's another thing, regret. Regret is a huge thing for death. Like, when people die, like, they say, like, when one die, they don't know their true self until, like, they truly accept death. So, like, a lot of people regret, like, what they do, and they, like, really feel scared, like, when they die, because they don't know where they're going to end up. Go ahead, bro.
I feel as though that Emily Dickinson is not all about faith. I think she's trying to persuade us. If you hear the word death, what do you think? You think of sorrow and pain. But throughout the three poems, she expressed death as nature or as equivalent to life. She thinks that death should be valued as much as life.
When I when I look at all three of these poems, I feel like, yeah, faith does tie into these poems a lot because I could not stop for death, and when I heard a fly buzz when I died, she don't really talk about it like she do, like she does in the last night that she lived, because in the last night that she lived, she talks about how you have to, she don't really say it directly, but it's indirectly, it's like how you gotta stay strong and how you gotta, when the death is natural, so how you gotta like try to take it naturally. Like how they talk about it in the beginning of the poem, they talk about it like it's not as serious as what it really is, and so
I think
yeah.
the way that Emily Dickinson talks about death, she basically gets us to think about death like not being something bad. Because usually when we think about it, like we'll think about it being something bad. But when she talks about death, like she doesn't say, I don't know, she doesn't talk about afterlife truly, but she doesn't say anything that would make one like feel sad. Like she's trying to look at it in a better perspective.
I think that like there's different ways to interpret like what she's saying in every poem. Like every poem has different meaning in it. Every poem, yeah. Well, I was thinking, but every poem that she has is like a different meaning of love and death. Like some of them she embracing the fact, like some of you gotta know what's coming.
I wanted to make up another point about, in the poem, The Last Night That She Lived, it's the third stanza that the others could exist while she must finish quiet, a jealousy for her aroused, so nearly infinite. So, how would you like to think about the people who mourn all the time, who feel as though they can't continue every day? They just sit here just like sad and emotional. They don't want to move on. Like after their loved ones die, like their mom, their dad, someone really close to them died, And like when she said that others could exist, do you feel as though those people who sit there, do you feel as though they're still existing? Like that means physically, emotionally, mentally, are they still existing here on Earth?
When they mourn?
I don't. I feel like they're living in the past, but how like that person is gone, like to wherever they're going, but you're still like mourning over them. You're not participating in everyday life. You're mourning over something that's not there. Like they're there probably spiritually, but they're not here physically. Life is like a physical thing.
Kiana, what do you think?
I think that like based on what she said like the people that died, like they live spiritually, and that's true because I can relate this to my life because my mom died, so like she's still here in the house spiritually, but I can't see her like fully like in her figure, but I know she's still there and she's still watching. It's just that
what do you think, Betty?
Well, I don't know about this question, but back to the death thing. I think that death, it means like some happiness too, because when you die and when they like stuff your body, it's like they put a smile on your face, showing that you accomplished your goals in your life.
Harold?